Disclaimer: this is for Lukola only. Skip this if you are not a shipper. This is purely fictional. This is a romanticized version based on the fact that a carriage scene was filmed and exist. This is not a true retelling. This contains a transcript and a description of the Season 3 episode 4 Old Friends of Bridgerton.
Lukola and Luke had been close friends for years, their bond deepening with each season on Bridgerton. Despite being in relationships during this time, a mutual attraction simmered beneath the surface, never fully acknowledged. Those around them noticed their special connection, easily recognizing that they had a crush on each other, but Lukola and Luke dismissed it as just friendship. They had already shared 2 on-screen kisses, carefully rehearsed with an intimacy coordinator and performed in front of the crew and cameras. Both scenes were deeply emotional, as they were both nervous about making the kisses look authentic and of course having to kiss your best friend. On camera was not an easy task, even if you had done it multiple times in your thoughts and dreams. They enjoyed those moments, but they held back as the professional they were, unable to fully be themselves with so many eyes watching. The night before their highly anticipated carriage scene, both were restless. The scene required a level of intimacy they hadn't shared before, and the weight of their hidden feelings made sleep elusive. The carriage offered something different, an intimate and safe place where they could act alone, allowing them to express their true feelings under the guise of their characters. Luke was a bundle of nerves and excitement, his guilt over his feelings for Lukola adding to his anxiety. Lukola, though equally nervous, was determined to remain professional and give her best performance. Both were committed to do their best, to make the scene unforgettable, not just for their characters and their horny little devils, but because it gave them a chance to channel the desires they couldn't express in real life. For Luke, it was a complicated mix of emotions. He had a girlfriend, and that relationship held him back from acknowledging the feelings he harbored for Lukola. He admired her deeply, her wit, her warmth, the way she made him laugh. But there was more. Seeing her embody Penelope stirred something within him. He couldn't help but be drawn to her femininity, the way her presence captivated him, and the allure of her physicality, particularly her soft curves. Yet, with every longing glance, guilt gnawed at him. How could he juggle these feelings for Lukola while being committed to someone else? Lukola, on the other hand, had tried to keep Luke firmly in the friend zone. She adored him, genuinely loved his company, and saw him as a good man. But she knew he was in a committed relationship, and acknowledging her own attraction to him felt like a betrayal, not just to his girlfriend but to their friendship. Still, there was no denying the pull she felt. Being close to him, hearing his voice as Colin, feeling his presence, all that stirred feelings she had buried deep. She was drawn to his easy charm, his naiveness, his strength, his manliness, and yes, his looks. But more than that, she feared what it would mean if she let herself admit just how much she wanted him. The set was buzzing with a different energy as the crew prepared the carriage. The atmosphere was electric, the anticipation palpable. Lukola and Luke exchanged a few nervous smiles, their usual banter tinged with an unspoken tension. They took their internal deep breaths before they bravely stepped into the scene. She climbed into the carriage. He was standing by the door. The crew ensuring that they were comfortable and camera-ready. In action. The carriage began to shake, mimicking the motion of a moving vehicle. In her carriage, Penelope wears a tearful scowl. Colin screams, "Wait!" The carriage rattles and stops. Colin stands at the open carriage door. Penelope, do not wish to speak with you. Colin, please. She glares at him. Let me in. Luke's voice was desperate, and his plea was not just for Colin's sake. He was pleading for a chance to express his real feelings. She tightens her lips and sits back stiffly in her seat. He climbs in, taking the seat facing her. She avoids his gaze. The door closing them off from the outside world. Only the microphones and cameras were there to capture their every word and expression. The lines between reality and fiction began to blur. Penelope will stop at Bridgerton House first. Driver, yes, miss. Lukola's heart raced as she delivered her lines, her character's indignation mirroring her own internal conflict. Nicola's stiff posture and avoidance of Luke's gaze were as much Penelope's actions as they were Nicola's attempts to shield herself from the intensity of her own feelings. "Penelope, what do you want?" "Colin, did Lord Debling propose?" He felt a pang of jealousy and fear. The thought of Nicola with someone else was unbearable, and this line gave him a channel to express his own turmoil. "Penelope, what business is that of yours?" "Colin, I need to know, did he propose?" "Penelope is odd. When I asked for your help in finding a husband, I did not realize that also meant you might try to deny me one as well." "Colin, it is my business because I care about you. You cannot marry that man. He will leave you, and he is too particular." "And he is. He is just not right for you, Pen." "Penelope did not propose." Colin tilts his head. "Penelope, in fact, he rejected me because of you. The scene you caused led him to believe you have feelings for me. An idea so preposterous, I do not know what to do besides laugh. Now, will you please let us ride home in silence and leave me alone?" As Nicola spoke, she felt a sharp pang of irony. The idea of Luke having feelings for her seemed both preposterous and achingly possible. Deep inside her, she often fantasizes with the idea of being with Luke, but those feelings had to be repressed each and every time. "Colin, I cannot." "Penelope, please." "Colin, I cannot." "Colin, because—" Luke hesitated, his next words filled with a longing that he really felt buttoned inside him. Luke's frustration and helplessness were palpable, his desire to confess his real feelings battling with his true fear of rejection. Tears well in his eyes. "Colin, what if I did have feelings for you?" Luke paused, his eyes locking onto Nicola's with an intensity that took her breath away. Luke's intense gaze made it difficult to stay in character. His eyes held a plea that was too real, too personal. Luke's voice was edged with a raw emotion that resonated deeply with Nicola. She felt her own resolve weakening, her feelings for him surfacing despite her best efforts to remain professional. "Penelope, what?" Nicola's voice filled with genuine doubt, the lines echoing her own fears about their relationship. Hearing him say those words, even in character, was overwhelming. He fixes her with a desperate stare. He drops to his knees in front of her. "Colin, I have spent so long trying to feel less, trying to be the kind of man society expects me to be. And for a moment I thought I had succeeded. But these past few weeks have been full of confounding feelings. Feelings like a total inability to stop thinking about you. About that kiss. Feelings like dreaming of you when I'm asleep. And in fact, preferring sleep because that is where I might find you. A feeling that is like torture, but one which I do not want to give up." Luke poured his heart into these lines. Every word was a confession, his true feelings for Nicola laid bare under the guise of acting. He was desperate for her to understand his torment. The vulnerability in his voice was genuine, his emotions raw and exposed. "Penelope, please. Do not say things you do not mean." Nicola's heart ached a little. Colin's confession was so beautiful and Luke's acting was so perfect. She would have wished it all to be true. "Colin, but I do mean it. It is everything I have wanted to say to you. For weeks." Luke's conviction was undeniable. This scene was his chance to tell Nicola the truth. His eyes shone with sincerity. Luke's heart was pounding with fear and hope. "Penelope, but, Colin, we are friends." Nicola delivered her line with a painfully delicate unsureness. Inside, she also felt the sting of her own unspoken emotions towards Luke. Every word she said mirrored the hurt she felt about their unacknowledged attraction. Luke hesitated, his next words filled with longing that he really felt buttoned inside him. "Colin, yes, but we." He searches her face with wild, shining eyes. "Colin, forgive me, I do not know what I was thinking." Nicola felt her own desires mirrored in the script, her pulse quickening. Luke's desire to kiss her had never been so strong, and in a few seconds, he would be able to act on it. It was overwhelming. He couldn't wait any longer. The line between friendship and love was blurring dangerously. They were about to kiss. Penelope, but I'd very much like to be more than friends. So much more. He leans in close, bringing his face to hers. Luke wanted to kiss her more than anything. Lukola was so beautiful, with her lovely blue eyes staring directly into his soul. He needed to feel her lips, to feel her touch, to hold her body close and caress her breasts. The longing was almost unbearable. They started to kiss, and the world outside the carriage ceased to exist, their lips meeting in a kiss that was both a part of the scene and a release of their pent-up feelings. They were free to go as far as they wished. They had discussed their boundaries and gave their consent about what they needed to do for the scenes, and they were both happy to play within those boundaries. They had been holding back for so long, and now, through Penelope and Colin, they were finally able to succumb to their own desires. The kiss deepened, their hands exploring each other with a desperate urgency born after years of unspoken desires, the lines between acting and reality dissolving completely. They share a scorching kiss. He wraps his arm around her waist. They separate for a brief moment and share several deep, slow kisses. He wraps his arm around her waist. They separate for a brief moment and share several deep, slow kisses. She runs her hands up to his face and down his chest. They pause, regarding each other in wonder. She brushes her fingers over the curves of his ear and wakes her hand through his hair. His open mouth curves upward in an ardent smile. He presses his lips to hers, flattening her against the back of the seat. His hand slides up her skirt, coming to rest at her hip. She grips his lapel as they kiss fervently. He pulls back and slowly slips one of her puffed sleeves down along the creamy skin of her shoulder. He brushes his lips over her throat and the yielding flesh below. He schemes his hand down and squeezes her lush breast through her sparkling bodice. She rests her hand on his, looking down with her pink lips parted. His hand slowly slides down to her thigh. She finds his mouth with hers. He pulls back. They lock eyes, heaving. He looks down. He gently lifts the hem of her dress to palm the smooth curve of her calf. He meets her pleading eyes. She nods. He gathers the sparkling fabric in his fist. He softens his fingers as he slips them past her knee and beneath the folds of her skirts. They keep their eyes fixed on each other. Her mouth drops open. She moans. He growls. They were excited. Their eyes widen and they drift closed. She clutches him convulsively. He watches her flushed face. Their open mouths meet. He catches her lip between his. She arches her neck and pulls him close. Her lips find his. They share several long, smoldering kisses. It felt so good, so natural, as they radiated love, contentment, and desire. They continued long after the director should have called cut, lost in each other, lost in a real soundproof fantasy. They were oblivious to the outside world, unaware that the carriage was now rocked only by their actions. Lukola was the first to return to reality, breaking their embrace. Penelope, oh! Colin, we are at your house. Colin, what? Oh, God. Could the carriage driver not keep on driving? They both burst into laughter. They were happy to have done justice to their characters and bashful about crossing a line their true selves couldn't. Glad that they did it, their connection was stronger than ever. They exchanged a look, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. She covers her grin with her hand. Penelope, you think anyone saw us? I was not paying much attention to anything. His smile fades. They gaze deeply into each one another's eyes. They share a tender, lingering kiss. Their noses brush as they open their eyes. He gently slips her sleeve back onto her shoulder, 2 fingers up, and straightens a lock of her hair. Penelope, what are you doing? He studies her face with an earnest, open-mouthed expression. He drops his gaze and swallows and looks back up at her. He lifts his chin. Penelope, Colin? He stands outside the open carriage door. He offers his hand. Colin, are you coming with me? Penelope, what? Your family will see me. Colin, for God's sake, Penelope Featherington. Are you going to marry me or not? Penelope's bosom swells. A smile blooms on her face. As they were taping her close up, Luke smiled back at her. Both knew they were actors, and no matter how great the take was, they would have to do it again.